Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us for our 10:45 to noon breakout session. Just want to do a sound check, make sure my audio is accessible to everyone. Our session is Designing for Everyone, leveraging user experience design and digital accessibility to create inclusive experiences. Who we are. My name is Ruben Moda, and I use he, him, his pronouns. A brief visual description of me. I'm a man with brown skin, short black hair. I'm wearing glasses, hearing aids, and a collared shirt and sweater. I work in the Office of Compliance as the Americans with Disabilities Act Coordinator. My role at the university is to ensure that we're following federal and state disability non-discrimination laws. So in plain language, I help protect the rights of disabled individuals at our university. On this slide is a portrait image of me facing the camera, smiling with a beard and a burgundy sweater. We also have a portrait of Will Burns facing the camera with a blue button-down shirt. Will is the director of the Center for User Experience, and unfortunately, he's not able to join us today.
Thanks, everyone. I'm glad to be here with you today. My name is Al Nemec. My pronouns are he, him. I am the Digital Accessibility Program Manager within the Center for User Experience within DoIT Academic Technology. My role involves working with our team to support the digital accessibility policy and digital accessibility program within the university's efforts. For the brief description of me, I am a light-skinned male. I have brown hair, glasses. I have a purple shirt, collared. And for the image on the screen as well, I am facing forward with a blue collared shirt. So today, we really wanted to kind of bring to you, as we talk about designing for everyone, these primary presentation goals, where we want to really bring home the idea of belonging and how designing for everyone brings that forward and how we can understand the importance of user experience design and its implications with this. The inclusion aspect of things, introducing the intersectionality between user experience design and how digital accessibility work together. We want to talk about working together. So much of this work is about working together here, and this is how we accomplish our goals. Learning about the university's digital accessibility program is a key aspect here, and talking about our requirements, highlighting the Americans with Disabilities Act, new digital accessibility rule. So before we begin, I think the big important thing here is to really kind of focus on how important this topic has become. We talk about the intersection of society and technology. And within that space, digital accessibility and user experience really lie at the heart of this. The idea that we have as our lives have become more digital, that we need to ensure that all users, regardless of ability, can access and engage with online spaces. They can engage with teaching and learning, with different aspects of interaction with their peers. A well-designed, accessible experience not only fosters that inclusion, but also enhances usability for everyone, reflecting on a commitment to a fair and innovative connective society. So to begin talking about belonging, I want to share a little bit about how we're going to talk about how this brings into the effect of our digital landscape. We talk about websites, web applications, instructional, work and administrative systems, research, and so many other programs as well that are affected by this. I think it's really important as well that we acknowledge the alignment with our university values. Diversity is a source of strength and creativity and innovation for UW-Madison. We value the contributions of each person and respect the profound ways their identity, culture, background, experience, status, abilities, and opinions enrich the university community. The university fulfills its public mission by creating a welcoming and inclusive community for people of every background. So to talk about human-centered design, we talk about how we handle user experience design. The idea and the concept behind human-centered design is to really focus, not on the systems themselves, not on the software, but on the people, the users of the systems, User experience design, also referred to as often as UX, so you'll see that abbreviation here in a lot of these slides. It lives within the realm of focusing on creating that user-centered experience within that digital world, and it supports the creation of digital tools and electronic resources so that they're meaningful and relevant to the entire audience. For those of you who may work in this space already, you may be familiar with one particular user experience designer named Jesse James Garrett. He's actually an individual, he was a core member of Adaptive Path, if you guys are familiar with that particular agency. And a lot of his original work, even back in the early 2000s, around the elements of user experience, really became kind of a cornerstone for how a lot of these different diagrams and thinkings of how user experience design has come forward. I think there's a great quote from him that we want to just share with you today, that user-centered design means understanding what users need, how they think, and how they behave, and incorporating that understanding into every aspect of your process. So when we think about the UX or the user experience as a foundation for inclusivity, the idea that we need to make sure that all individuals of different backgrounds, different experiences can interact with the environment. The interaction of digital tools and electronic resources includes the aspects that involve design. We talk about branding, usability, and functionality. These are all key components here. It's critical that these digital tools, of course, that we bring into that an important aspect of research and analysis to understand, are we doing the right things? Are we making the right movements to make sure that everyone is included? There's methods to uncover the understanding of these needs through research and follow this process. We need to be able to repeat this and be able to bring this forward and see that we make tangible results. There's a couple of particular methods that I think for those that, again, who may work in this space, that some of you may be already dealing with this, there's a lot when it comes to these different components. So the research side of things, we think of the core aspect of gathering that data, these interviews, surveys, observations, conversations, getting to know what those understanding that meaning of what those individual experiences are. It's having a diverse set of audiences. Like a lot of the individual conversations that we've already had this morning with folks, it's about knowing, understanding what everyone is dealing with, that you get a greater sense of what you can accomplish and what you can change to better include all. The analysis side of things, creating personas and mapping a full picture of the user experience. That involves a practice of interacting with the tools and resources, and it's a journey that requires understanding different frames of perspective. The design, we look at developing wireframes, prototyping, content strategy, of course, and these include patterns and pathways that structure and enable us to interact with digital tools and electronic resources. Different users, by the way, interpret design in very unique ways. Testing and observing, of course, interaction with prototypes and how we begin to finalize a design. We want to be able to take what we've learned and actually apply this in some capacity. And doing that is where we develop sort of a clearer picture of where we're going. And oftentimes, this is a cyclical pattern. We may take what we've developed at that point and bring this back to the research phase again. And of course, last iteration, as I just mentioned, we really want to bring through and working with everybody that's involved here to sort of develop these processes and repeat them is how we strengthen what we're developing and what we're making for an inclusive digital experience. So these are things that get practiced very regularly. I'm sure in a lot of different areas of UW-Madison. We have a lot of different work that individuals do in different areas. It's very important. Some of this work is done here at the Center for User Experience with Intuit Academic Technology. So within that space, we have a core set of team that really focuses on this work and really develops a core practice around this that really elevates what we try to do and help support others do in terms of understanding the perspectives of their digital tools and how that they can improve that user experience. We are available as a team, by the way, for those that may or may not have heard of us before, to partner with you and hear about, learn at developing your improved digital tools and resources. We want to be able to offer different things we can provide that not only just are tangible sort of working with you services, but we work on guides as well. We want to be able to develop tools and technologies that you can all use. We want to be able to make sure that you can connect with us for consultation and how you might work together to create a sense of belonging in what you're developing. And next, I'll pass to Ruben.
Thanks so much, Al. This is Ruben again. So Al has highlighted the importance of human-centered design, and this segment of the presentation is going to note the intersectionality between user experience design and how it incorporates digital accessibility principles to enhance inclusion for everyone. This slide is titled User Experience Enables Digital Accessibility. We know good user experience design includes clear hierarchy and flow of information, consistency with content layout and digital tools, as well as easy and efficient use of technology that centers humans over the technology. So in other words, individuals can easily and simply locate the information they need and perform the actions required that is offered by that technology. A fundamental digital accessibility concept is that disabled individuals are able to seamlessly use technology in the same quick, easy manner as non-disabled individuals and obtain the same benefits and services with or without the use of assistive technology. Good user experience design enables this digital accessibility concept to be realized regardless of the type of digital tool, whether it's a website, electronic document, or mobile application. All right, we're going to engage in our first interactive poll. Don't worry, there's no math involved. I'll be really transparent. I certainly got that math problem wrong in the last session. But we have a question to pose to you. You can scan the QR code or visit by navigating to the website slido.com and answer this poll question. What percentage of Americans have a disability? We'll give you a couple seconds to pull that up, and if you can navigate and engage on your mobile device. What percentage of Americans have a disability? Is it 12%, 25%, or 32%? Looks like we have 90 responses, and we're creeping up to 108, 116, 150 responses. All right, hopefully we don't crash this website. So, ooh, interesting. The correct response is 25%. According to the Centers for Disease Control, 1 in 4, or 25% of individuals in the United States, or 61 million Americans, have a disability. We know nationally, according to the National Center of Education Statistics, in higher education, 21% of undergraduate students report having a disability. This statistic is from 2019 to 2020. At our university, according to the McBoney Disability Resource Center, 1 in 10 students is affiliated as having a disability at our university. So we know that disability is present, and we need to define what is a disability to be able to move forward with our presentation. So the meaning of disability can have numerous definitions. We can apply a legal definition, we can apply a medical lens definition that really focuses on the individual's medical condition, or we can apply a social definition that essentially puts forward the idea that it is society's inaccessible design that causes a lack of access and thus perpetuates disability. For the purposes of our presentation, we're going to define disability as simply a mismatch between a person's capabilities and what their society, life situation, or culture demands. On this slide, we have a graphic image of 12 individuals that are drawn. and sorted into 3 columns. Each column has a different label. The first column is labeled permanent, the second column is labeled temporary, and the last column is labeled situational. There are 4 rows that convey a disability or impact that's typically classified as a disability. So having difficulties with touch, seeing, hearing, or speaking. When we think about disability, we often think about it as being permanent, such as the example of someone in the last row under speaking being nonverbal. This is someone who is unable to communicate verbally. However, individuals can also have temporary circumstances in which they might not be able to communicate verbally, such as having laryngitis. And then we also encounter situations in which there's a situational impact, such as in this image, someone with a heavy accent that might create a barrier in access. So we really wanted to highlight on this slide that disability is everywhere, and it can be an everyday and natural occurrence. Why is accessible content important? Why does it even matter? If you're able, raise your hand and let me know if you picked up your desktop phone in your office and made a phone call to another colleague at the university within the last year. How many of you used the phone application in your computer to make that phone call? How many of you registered for this event by going to a website as opposed to calling someone up in the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Educational Achievement? Digital tools and electronic resources are everywhere. They are an essential and integral part of our university. The way we used the website 10 years ago was simply to learn information. The way we use websites nowadays is as a portal to complete transactions and to gain benefits. So imagine when you go to wisc.edu, what do? You click on My UW, and then you make the unfortunate decision to log into your email, and then you get bogged down into email for the next 8 hours, right? Or you log into Box and you start creating that important presentation that you need to deliver. So this really highlights the integral need for why we need to ensure that our digital content is accessible. Also, technology offers some very specific benefits of information and ease of use. We can very quickly complete transactions, such as pulling up our favorite mobile app and ordering transportation through Uber, for example, or ensuring that we have our meal ordered for tonight. And so we must ensure that this same benefit of ease of use is available to disabled individuals so they can obtain the same information, complete the same transactions, or perform the same function and obtain the same benefits in the same equivalent, timely, independent, private, and easy manner. So we've been discussing a little bit about this disability concept and that disabled individuals need to have access to digital tools and electronic resources and be able to engage with them seamlessly. However, I want to introduce a principle known as the POUR principle. This principle really highlights what makes a digital tool accessible. So the POUR principle, P-O-U-R, was developed by the World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C, and you can visit their website at w3c.org. When a digital tool or electronic resource is perceivable, this means that a disabled individual is able to tell that it's there. So if you have visual elements on a web page, someone who is blind and uses a screen reader will know it's there because it has text alternatives to explain the non-text elements of that page, such as the visual elements. Operable, this is the O in the POUR principle. This ensures that disabled individuals can actually use and benefit from the technology. For example, if we have a video that has auditory sounds, including captions ensures that someone who is deaf or hard of hearing can access that information. The U stands for understandable. Does the disabled individual know what is being communicated to them? This really focuses on a plain language and simple to use intuitive approach to technology. Is the tool understandable enough that it limits individuals from making mistakes? And R stands for robust. This ensures that the tool is able to be used by one's assistive technology device, and that the tool has long-standing coding and markup language that makes it available to be used with a diverse array of assistive technology devices, and to also continue to maintain accessibility whenever there are version updates with the tool. This slide is titled Interaction with Digital Content. I want to talk briefly about assistive technology. However, I want to take a step back and really highlight the importance of assistive technology. If you're able, indicate, are you aware of the recent Department of Transportation's fine of an airline in the amount of $50 million, 50, for damaging wheelchairs? All right, I'm seeing some nods in the audience, fantastic. This is a very significant fine that's been issued by a federal agency because this agency recognizes that assistive equipment is critical for disabled individuals. Assistive technology such as wheelchairs can be extensions of a disabled individual themselves. So someone who uses a wheelchair due to a mobility disability, that wheelchair can essentially serve as their legs. So assistive devices allow disabled individuals to participate in all aspects of American society, whether that's traveling, going to a grocery store, or voting, going to a public library, etc. They're quite important. So when digital tools and electronic resources are accessible, they ensure that they operate with assistive technology devices applicable to technology, such as screen readers. The digital tool supports keyboard navigation for someone who might not be able to use their arms, for example, or doesn't have the physical dexterity to operate a mouse. Multimedia and social media contain captions and audio description to ensure equal access for individuals with hearing loss or who are blind. There's voice dictation capabilities for an individual to interface with and use technology. There's also magnification. The tool allows for zooming in and reflow for individuals with vision loss to be able to access the information that's available. And then there's also sufficient and strong color contrast. These are just some of the features that are required for a digital tool to be accessible in terms of interacting with assistive technology and offering features that are required under the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines at 2.1 AA. There are over 78 success criteria that need to be met to ensure technology is accessible. Al, do you want to take us through a screen reader demo?
Sure, thank you, Ruben. Well, this next slide is going to be doing some heavy lifting. We're going to get an example. I'm sure all of you have probably experienced a number of different technologies in your day that have had a level of inaccessibility. This particular slide is doing this by example. As you can tell, there's no missing title there. It's just too weak of contrast. There's actually text there. It's not necessarily missing, but this is an example where this isn't being applied in the best way because it doesn't make things different content available to different individuals at different environments. It's not about whether or not you feel that you've had a need for some sort of adjustment to technology. Technology changes in your environment. This particular demo, by the way, we're going to show just a brief clip of what does it look like when you might be interacting with that content and you might be an individual that needs a screen reader. What does that content sound like? What is that information? How is that conveyed to you? So in this next video here, you'll see a little bit of a sense of basically a software called macOS VoiceOver, for those who haven't used it, built into the operating system. And it's going to announce some social media posts. And you can get a sense of quickly how this goes. This will be very quick, so we'll just sort of get through this pretty quickly. Go ahead and play when you're ready.
So excited to formally introduce our new intern class Red Heart. Link, number Wisp Putzers. Link, number a Wealth. Link, number a Wealth Kids. Link, number F.
So I didn't drink a lot of coffee this morning because I didn't want to talk like that, because I would have been way too quick. But it's a great example of those who are using this technology. That is the pace that they're working with, or if not faster. It can be incredible to see individuals that need and use this technology every day, and it makes a significant difference. But as you can see, the content that you might look at visually can be interpreted in a very different way. So as we talk about this moving forward, keep this in mind. This will be something that we'll want to keep in mind as we think of this technology in a tangible sense. So I want to bring into talking about how we're going to try to bring digital accessibility into the light. How do we kind of get this effort moving forward here within all of our work? What's going to be true of so much of what is accomplished at UW Madison, we are definitely stronger when we are working together on this sort of problem. In particular, the idea of digital accessibility is that the program itself is building on all of the tremendous work that is already happening in many ways across every area of the university. The program takes this internal work, really takes an organized approach to addressing that need. It tries to work with individuals in every area. We want to understand and hear from all of you about what you might be dealing with, what you might be developing, and understand how to integrate digital accessibility practices in a seamless way that are going to be tangible and continuous and supportive, and not something that feels like it's adding more work to what you need to develop day in, day out. The program itself has some specific goals. Namely, the implementation of the UW-Madison Digital Accessibility Policy is one of the big ones. If you have an awareness of the digital accessibility policy, please raise your hand. All right. So a good portion of the room, at least half, I'd say. The digital accessibility policy in of itself went into effect in July of 2023. This new policy did help to provide a specific path towards bringing our compliance to WCAG AA 2.1. We also want to work to applying resources that support a distributed university. It's very easy to do things maybe in a small team, but as we all know, this can be quite the effort when you're trying to span every area of every part of the university. Some of these resources that we want to talk about to make this possible, they're going to come in the form of educational materials, tools, and of course, more importantly, the people. We want to raise awareness and develop a culture of inclusive practices as well. This is about bringing everyone together and making sure that everyone can be included throughout this time. To talk a little bit about the approach we're making with this is we tend to often boil this down to three primary steps we really want everyone to think about when they're talking about their digital content. First is to consider what digital content you have, and do you still need it? What content is still being used? What is not being used? I think a lot of times the amount of information and content can be overwhelming. I think there's an awful lot of material that everyone deals with day in, day out, and some of this content may be considered more of an archive nature. Maybe it is things we need to hang on to, but we don't actively use. That is sort of the key component here to think about, is how do we make this information manageable and what we're dealing with there. We talk about to revise as well, so learning about the library of materials that you have and prioritize those. So you do have a lot of really important work, a lot of really important material. How do we take that and think through and prioritize what you need to develop and improve if need be, and learn about how you can sort of prioritize that work and to make it more tangible to apply. And last, raise. As always, we try to bring this information forward. We're so happy to be able to be here with you today, but being able to elevate this information and this sort of message to everybody to make sure that they're aware is really, really important. I wonder how many that are getting the chance to sort of talk with us today, some of this information may be new to. And if that is, that's perfectly fine. I think that's something that we always want to continue to improve and develop. And we see an increased effort on this every day that this sort of work is happening. There we go. So within the actual policy itself, for those, again, it sounds like there was a good half of the room that was already familiar with the policy. It intends to bring up our standards for web accessibility. For those that may be familiar with these, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, there's a version of these that always iterates through over time. So we're currently on the standard of 2.1 AA. That standard is brought with it a sense of modern web technology standards that make things more approachable and applicable to all individuals in different environments. Digital accessibility technology is central to how we interact and communicate with this information. So it's crucial that we try to strive towards the same standard. We need to ensure accessible digital spaces promote equity and inclusion for all. And doing so involves making sure that we can make sure those technologies that are accessing the web in a variety of ways, like that screen reader you saw, can do so. And that relies on these standards. In accessible technology, of course, it enables full participation. So how do we get there? I mean, we have a number of different ways to approach this issue. I think first and foremost, as I mentioned earlier, is talking about the people. We need to have individuals and staff with expertise in all their different areas that they work. They want to include web developers, designers, accessibility specialists, including those with it, though everyone that works in other areas, whether that's instruction or research. These are individuals we need to kind of bring together to talk about how we can elevate and move this forward. We need to talk about education and training as well. Now, I'm thinking of those terms now new, based on our keynote this morning. Specific to this, we need to talk about education and then the practice of actually doing so, that training. So I thought that was excellent with our keynote speaker this morning. The ongoing education we want to provide to make sure everyone can feel like they have an understanding of the why and the what they can do to make this change is really important, and then to put that into practice. We want to talk about tools and technology. The idea that this sort of thing, when you may be coming at this very new, that you have some understanding of exactly what to make changes to, requires some additional work with tools and technology. So we want to be able to help provide those sort of resources, and that is something that we are actively working towards. There's a number of tools that are out there even today. So I encourage you, if you're looking at this, we will talk about this in a few moments, but things that I hope that you spend some time after today's session or later throughout the week to take a little bit of time to work and look at. And lastly, collaboration and support. None of this work should be felt that you're doing this alone. For those that feel that you're doing this sort of work by yourself, this is something we want to encourage you to reach out. And there is a great community out there that is doing a lot of this work. So I will highlight that as well as we kind of move these forward. One big component of this, and I'm curious here for those that may be a part of our liaison network, if you are, feel free to raise your hand. I think this is something where these individuals, if you haven't been working with digital accessibility in your unit, you may not know that you have a digital accessibility liaison. These folks do an incredible amount of work within their particular unit to try to bring forward and communicate digital accessibility needs, both from what they need to central areas of campus, as well as receive that information and provide and disseminate those resources to their staff. They are a crucial part of the work that is happening within this space. Digital liaisons support their unit, and they support that communication aspect. One key aspect about this is, you may not know, but there are 150 different liaisons already involved in this work. So from across all schools, colleges, and divisions and units within UW-Madison, chances are, if you haven't met yours yet, I encourage you to reach out and try to learn about them a little bit more. Next, I want to talk a little bit about how this expands beyond that liaison network. We also have a group of individuals that have been putting their time and energy and volunteer effort into this, involving every aspect from every corner of the university. There are over 400 members, and I'm talking, of course, about our community of practice. We have that set of individuals that are already engaged in digital accessibility on their own time and working into their best practices and learning how they can actually develop and improve that technology. There's active community members that will get together usually on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. They will develop help guides for each other or work and communicate together. There's a number of different ways that folks can get involved in this space, and I would love to to highlight and welcome those folks. And just a big thank you to those. If any of you are in the room, thank you for your work. This is incredible. Yes, thank you. I want to make sure it's important too that inclusive support. I think if you aren't a part of this community yet, we actually we'll meet on Teams. We'll do Zoom sessions. Everyone here is incredibly supportive. Chances are, if you ask a question in this group, you're going to get an answer from at least 10 different people from 10 different backgrounds, if not more. And that's incredible because you get to hear about how this is going to affect you depending on what your particular scenario might be. And you can bring as what you might not think as a broad need, but is certainly important. And you may be surprised that there's more that deal with that problem than just yourself. So next, I'd like to talk a little bit about the actual program services we have within the Center for User Experience as well. So I talked a little bit about this with our user experience side of things, but we also handle digital accessibility. This is an incredible group of folks that work on digital accessibility in terms of the overall need for understanding where we have areas to make improvements. So if you have anything that you own that you work on, whether that be a website or some other digital media, a document, multimedia even, I encourage you to reach out to the Center for User Experience. We are going to be able to be there to help you understand exactly where you can make improvements to that through our accessibility evaluations. So this is a free service where individuals can contact us and we can work with you to better understand where you can make those adjustments. Thinking of things like specific core services that everybody leverages on campus, these are aspects we get involved in and try to understand where we can make those improvements, down to individual PDFs or documents that you plan to distribute. Knowing how you can make improvements to those is wonderful. And knowing once you know how to do that, you can then apply that moving forward, and it just elevates all of the work that you do going forward there. The other thing that we do within this group is we work on guides, and we work on self-service information. Not everyone likes to engage in the same way in terms of what they do with their learning, and what we have here is a number of guides that we produce that are available on the it.wisc website. I'll go over that in a moment as well. That help sort of give you a sense of what things you should be doing. What are those good steps to proceed forward with when you're working on different technologies? And lastly, of course, we welcome you to reach out and just talk with us. Everyone's situation may be different. You may not feel it fits into any one of these particular categories. We have a mixture of opportunities to reach out to us, including just, of course, reaching out and contacting us, office hours, or if you just want to designate some time. This sort of time can be really valuable. Not only can we obviously try to help share information that might help you, but we often learn a lot from you in return, and it helps shape how we can improve things moving forward. So, again, no math. We did promise no math, but this is multiple choice. So I'm hoping maybe a few of you might be able to look at this and give me your best thoughts. If you were to, how much of the WCAG 2.1 specification does automatic accessibility scanning address? And I want to stress the word automatic there. How much do you think automatic accessibility scanning addresses? So as you think of this, think of tools that you might get that promise a simple solution, a one-button quick solution to making your accessibility improvements there. While this is going on, just big thanks to the folks handling all the media in the back of the room. They're doing an incredible job. It's almost addicting to be able to see in live in real time how this comes in. So. All right, I think it might slow down a little bit. I'll just go ahead and hit next. So. Oh, very good, very close, excellent. So yes, so roughly 20 to 30%. When you're thinking about any one particular piece of software that promises to give you the quick answer on exactly what you need to solve, the reality is you need to understand what you're trying to make accessible. You need context for the information. That always requires an additional manual approach. A lot of these tools can help get you into that, but it's really important to understand that there's never going to be sort of one quick solution to these sort of things. So just to kind of break things into a little bit of the evaluation stuff, I did touch on that a little bit earlier already, but I wanted to talk about how, with how we sort of approach this sort of work. The idea is we have a good array of experience already within the idea of evaluating a particular piece of technology. And any time that we were not to have that experience, we know where to reach out to get that better understanding. We'll help you with a detailed analysis, and we work through central campus tools such as things that you use today and things that are coming down the road. We are working with teams all over campus at this point to have a better understanding how to apply that. And often what we'll do is as we develop and work through these tools, we'll evaluate them not with any sort of singular scanning tool, but we try to evaluate them as someone who might approach them with that screen reader that you may have heard, or approach them who might have dexterity or mobility issues, and how can that sort of particular piece of software improve by making certain adjustments. We provide a detailed report. This report would go back to you. You'd have a better understanding of exactly where you can make those changes. It gives you some severity and understanding of which things you might want to focus on and prioritize one over the other. And of course, you get to, of course, work with us and consult with us. So you can ask those questions. You can understand a little bit more of where you can make those changes. And this sort of thing just continues to improve and elevate that knowledge and understanding moving forward. It's one of the great things about this, and this happens, I think, across any of the technologies that we've worked with and any individuals, is once you have this, it's not sort of something you have to now add as this service every time. A lot of folks learn and understand this, and now it's built in going forward. And that's fantastic, because then they feel like they've been able to improve that information. And it becomes a standard part of their practice. So evaluations often come in the form of working with somebody, doing a couple different times of consultation, but then they feel like they've got it for what they need to do there. And then we move on to something else. So there's a great opportunity there. I do recognize and recommend that you do reach out when you can. So I talked about the guidance side of things. We have guides and documents that we've provided and authored to the IT.WISC website. If you haven't been to these before, these are called the Make It Accessible guides. We can provide a link, I think, following this as well. But Make It Accessible guides include references for how to handle documents, websites, multimedia, course content, even procurement. We're talking about purchasing technology. What's the sort of language you should maybe consider including when you're talking to that vendor, right? That sort of thing. How to maybe consider and handle virtual meetings. All these things can be really, really important, and it brings more people into the fold and help them feel they can be a part of whatever's happening there. You're not going to get great engagement with your team if you don't feel like everyone can be there and be present. And they can't be present if they can't engage. And lastly, the consultation side of things too. We love to work with folks. This is a great, great opportunity. It's one of the best parts, I think, about being part of this team is we get to coordinate and work with so many of you and get to showcase what you do and learn about that. It's truly wonderful. We learn about the best, you can learn more about best steps, to take with whatever you're doing and how to apply that moving forward. So we really want to think about and understand your process. If you have a team and they're working on photography and they're working on how do they take that photography and make sure that the proper metadata is in that photo. So every time you use it moving forward, it's read with a proper description of what is happening in that photo. That's something that we can talk about with you and look at what tools you're using and give you advice. And these are the sort of things that really, really help improve your process going forward as well. And of course, there's all different levels of expertise. We have people that come in with really phenomenal technology backgrounds, some that come in with teaching and learning, some that come in with research, and not only do we learn a lot from all of you, but it gives us an opportunity to try to provide this information in ways that's more contextual to your work. So I think it goes a long way, and again, I can't recommend it enough. So I want to close with this. We have a lot of work to do. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot still to do to make everything here accessible. That being said, there is truly an incredible culture at UW-Madison that really can be the foundation for how we're going to be able to move things forward. Seeing that we have just a huge diverse set of community members already is incredible. Having this aspect that we want to make sure that all of those involved with every area and every activity that they get involved with here are included is something that has been an incredible work of every individual that I've seen bring forward new ideas, new technologies, different programs. And that shared university responsibility is the ultimate component here. Making sure that everyone understands you all have a part to play, and making sure that this is something that you can do in your work moving forward will be the biggest thing that we can push forward here. So with Ruben, I'd pass it back to you.
Super, thanks so much, Al. I'm just going to do a time check. Fantastic. All right, this slide is titled Requirements, and so Al and I have shared information about the importance of right doing through the benefits of user experience design to foster an inclusive digital ecosystem. If this isn't enough of a carrot for you, well, I am a compliance officer, so I'm happy to share with you the stick. I do work in the Office of Compliance, but on a serious note, we are a very non-sticky group, so we're happy to support you and just share with you information about the legal framework that underpins our disability non-discrimination obligations when it comes to digital content. So first, I just want to set the stage about what is the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is one of our premier national federal disability anti-discrimination laws. This law was originally passed in 1990, and it was amended in 2008 to be even more inclusive. This law essentially affirms that disability rights are indeed civil rights. This law makes it very clear that if someone is qualified to receive our services or is qualified to be an employee and they are disabled, we cannot prevent this individual from obtaining or participating in our programs, services, or activities because of their own disability. Recently, last April, April 24th, 2024, the Department of Justice, which oversees the Americans with Disabilities Act, put forward a new digital accessibility rule. I'm going to share a little bit of information about this new rule on this slide titled, "What is the new rule?" So the new rule sets out a very clear requirement for digital tools and electronic resources to be seamlessly accessible for disabled individuals. It points to the technical standard of 2.1 AA, and we must meet our compliance date of April 24th, 2026 in order to comply. While this is a new rule, there's actually a lot of old guidance that has been issued by various federal agencies, such as the Department of Education and the Department of Justice, as well as the Department of Health and Human Services, just to name a few. We're going to engage in our last interactive activity for our session, and that is, when did the Department of Justice, which oversees the Americans with Disabilities Act, first say that web content needs to be accessible? Was it in 2005, 1987, 1996, or 1990? When did the Department of Justice first issue guidance about web accessibility? 2005, 1987, 1996, or 1990. We're up to just over 125 responses. And we'll wait just another 10 seconds.
Wish we had some Jeopardy music. That'd be wonderful.
All right, let's take a look. Ooh, interesting, 2005. That is incorrect. The first guidance was actually issued in 1996. So I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to the history of laws, so I'll try not to overdo it. But the ADA was passed in 1990, and one of the creators of the Americans with Disabilities Act was a senator named Tom Harkin of Iowa. And he, along with Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah, basically got a group together and they passed this federal law. Senator Harkin received a letter from one of his constituents, and that letter was an inquiry about whether websites are subject to the ADA's disability non-discrimination requirements. So he reached out to then Assistant Attorney General for the Department of Education and basically said, hey, our websites, do we have to ensure that they're accessible? Well, in 1996, Assistant Attorney General Deval Patrick wrote back to Senator Tom Harkin and wrote, quote, the internet is an excellent source of information, and, of course, people with disabilities should have access to it as effectively as people without disabilities. Since 1996, the Department of Justice or the Department of Education has issued guidance in 2003, 2010, 2020, and even as recently as last year, 2023. The most recent guidance really focused on learning management systems because this is how most universities now operate course content. What's really fantastic about this new rule, I want to take a moment and highlight it, is that all these previous guidances didn't give us a technical standard. It just said your stuff needs to be accessible. But what does accessible mean? This new rule makes it explicitly clear. Just like we have accessible building code that's required under federal and state law, this new rule makes it very clear what we need to do to ensure that our digital content is accessible. So our new digital accessibility rule, which goes into effect April 24th, 2026, has a wide scope. It essentially covers all digital tools and electronic resources used in university programs, services, and activities. So this will include, it's not limited to, but will include websites and web forms, software, applications, and mobile apps, multimedia, social media, course content, even if it's behind a NetID, it doesn't matter, library content, employee work tools, databases and systems, as well as conventional electronic documents. The new rule defines conventional electronic documents specifically as PDF, word processing, spreadsheet, and presentation files. So at our university, we're very accustomed to removing barriers for disabled individuals through providing a reasonable accommodation. It is our minimum compliance obligation. However, this new rule makes it very clear that reasonable accommodation is something that should be very, very limited when it comes to digital accessibility. When it comes to technology, This is because we know that technology provides very specific benefits to individuals that we've mentioned earlier in our presentation, specifically that ease of use, timely access, independence, and privacy. The difference between independence and privacy means independence means that the individual is able to perform the functions of that technology or gain its benefit. Privacy means that the individual doesn't need to rely on someone else or have to disclose to someone else about the transaction that they're trying to complete. So as an example, we can all independently go on we should be able to independently go onto a website and be able to register for a doctor's appointment. Privacy means that we don't have to engage with the doctor's office to schedule that medical appointment. The new rule makes it very clear that a disabled individual having to interact with someone and losing that benefit of privacy is something that we need to be aware of and that we do have to safeguard and protect. I want to make it clear that reasonable accommodations do not provide these benefits. Reasonable accommodations take a significant amount of time to develop. They require the individual to interact with either their divisional disability representative at the university or the McBurney Disability Resource Center to disclose medical information, and then they don't have that timely ease of access in gaining access. On this slide titled, "What if a digital tool is not accessible?" So what about tools that we're currently using at the university that are not accessible? The new rule requires us to create a conforming alternate version of that tool. Conforming means that the alternate version also meets the WCAG 2.1 AA standards. However, creating an alternate version of a tool is supposed to be limited to very minimal circumstances, because the new rule is really focused on seamless integration of all individuals using the same piece of technology. It's really trying to reduce that principle of separate but equal. So any technology that we operate that technologically cannot be made accessible, we need to create a conforming alternate. So what this means is that it is the tool itself that does not have the technological capabilities to meet WCAG. It is not the person who created or operates the tool. It's not their technical limitations that grants this exception. And then any legal limitations, such as a contract with a vendor that doesn't allow us to make updates to that tool, we then have an obligation to create that seamless conforming alternate version. So under the new rule, there are 5 specific exceptions. This primarily concerns when content was created and whether it is necessary to participate in, apply to, or benefit from a program. Our first exception pertains to digital content that was created before April 24th, 2026, and that we specifically retain for reference, research, or record keeping. We can call this content archive content, and we need to put it into a separate location or label it as archive. That way, a disabled individual, when they encounter this content, they know that they can expect it to not be accessible, and they can then request a reasonable accommodation if, for example, they're trying to access your old meeting minutes from a departmental meeting a couple years ago that you've kept for record-keeping purposes. Any pre-existing conventional electronic documents that are not needed to participate in, apply to, or benefit from a program, service, or activity does not need to be made accessible. So for example, on your website, you might have a series of org charts from the last couple of years that just kind of highlights how your organization has changed, who's in charge, who was in charge 5 years ago, et cetera. If those documents, if that PDF, for example, is not necessary for an individual to gain access or participate in your program, service, or activity, then it doesn't need to be made accessible. This, again, is content created before April 24th, 2026. Pre-existing social media posts, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And then content posted by a private individual who's not under the authority of the university. So we have a university makes a social media post, and a private individual responds and uploads a video without captions. That post by that private individual does not need to be accessible. However, an employee in your area who manages your social media account, they need to ensure that all of their posts are accessible. And then lastly, any individualized, password protected, or otherwise secure conventional electronic documents about the individual or their property does not need to be accessible. So for example, a student's individual academic transcript, our employee pay stubs, the water bill that we receive from our public municipality, those are items that do not need to be accessible. So what are we currently doing at the university to prepare for this new rule? So recently, university leadership asked a committee to get together and to begin to explore and analyze the new rule and its impact to the university. So over the past couple of months, the Digital Accessibility University Coordination Committee, along with 6 work groups, have begun to interact with numerous groups, stakeholders, and departments to collect feedback about the impact of this new rule and to develop what resources are necessary to help us comply. We are expected to present a final report of our findings to executive leadership at the end of this calendar year, so at the end of December. What action can you take now? Al mentioned that we have an existing digital accessibility policy that went into effect July 2023. It is good policy. While it's slightly out of scope with the new rule, it does point to the same technical standard. So continuing to engage with that policy, connecting with your digital accessibility liaison and your unit leadership to elevate accessibility as a critical value of your unit to really promote the idea that accessibility is a shared responsibility can be an important initial step that you make. Begin to review the Center for User Experiences and Make It Accessible guides. Familiarize yourself with accessible content, processes, and procedures. Begin to inventory what tools do you use, what are most commonly accessed digital tools, and determine if they're accessible. And begin to develop a plan with dates for how you'll bring those tools into compliance. And I think this last recommendation is critical. Begin to reach out to your vendors who develop, host, or deliver third-party content for you. Make them aware of this new rule. Tell them that you value accessibility, that your unit values accessibility, and that the university values accessibility, and ask them to begin to make the tool compliant with the ADA's new digital accessibility rule requirement. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. We're going to open it up for questions. I think we have a microphone that's going to be...
This one over there. If anyone has any questions, I welcome you. There should be 2 microphones. Looks like one on either side. Please feel free to come on up if possible. Otherwise, if not possible, I'd love if someone can help also pass a microphone around.
Hello.
Oh, excellent.
Hi, thank you very much for the great presentation. This is Marinas from Dapper. I have advocated for digital accessibility for over 12 years, and in industry, in different campuses, and here. So one of the things that I have seen in many different settings is the fear of unknown and how the changes are going to impact people. So how should we respond to this unknown fear? Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Yes, so that fear of the unknown, I think, as we consider, what are the things we're not aware of within digital accessibility that we should be handling? Is that perhaps characterize it, what you're thinking? Yeah, I think the idea that we have things that we previously thought we had an understanding of with what we were developing or producing digitally, and that there's new areas that we need to now be aware of. I think there's an encouragement here that needs to be fostered. There needs to be space given to those who are learning about this for the first time. I think the idea that we have an important aspect to this work that will take really, in some ways, large shifts in the aspects of what people develop. So thinking about that document you might have that instructor might create and distribute to their class, you might have to think about how that can be supported and how that can be developed with additional folks within their unit, or even working with the center or other folks to try to figure out how we can make that more accessible. I think there's an understanding, I think it's very understandable that there is a concern that even in those changes that you're not going to address all of the things that you think you're addressing, right? That there's still some more there. It's really hard. I think a lot of us here in this room, we all try to put ourselves in the shoes. We try to put ourselves in the mindset of someone else who's having a different experience than us. And that is always a real challenge. And feeling like you still aren't hitting it right, you aren't understanding, is very natural. I think the important thing is that people are trying their best to move to that space and encouraging more that community aspect to reach out to others to say, I think I'm doing the right thing, but I'm not sure. And that we need to be welcoming to each other and understanding of what everyone is trying to do and encouraging further changes if need be. I think that's probably the most important piece of that.
This is Ruben. I'll add, change is hard. And this new rule, it feels very overwhelming. I've been reading this new rule since last April. I'm overwhelmed by it every time I read it. Start small, start somewhere. Make a rule for yourself. I will not send another email without running the accessibility checker built into that email. I will not create another Word document until I've checked it for accessibility. Very small steps really ingrain kind of that process of change where you realize you can very quickly and seamlessly create accessible content. I'm going to be very transparent. PDFs are hard to make accessible. So they are essentially based off of another file type, and then it becomes a portable document format. But really think about and challenge yourself, why are you sending a PDF to another colleague at the university, for example, who has access to the same technology platform? So if you have a Word document, can you send it as a Word document, et cetera? So I think just small behavioral shifts will really go a long way towards creating accessible content.
I know that the UW shared their KB knowledge with several other universities. Your knowledge base was well received by a lot of them. I used to be the gal that charged those universities each year there in your Do-It billing office. My question is, are they working in groups, the universities, on this?
Absolutely. It's a great question. Yeah. So, and thank you for being part of all of that work as well. I think the idea that within this sort of environment, we have a lot of knowledge to share, both obviously across all the different units within UW-Madison, but also the universities as well, the Big Ten. So folks like Ruben and myself, as well as many others, are in a lot of partnership and conversations with the universities. We're involved with folks in the Big Ten as well. There's a lot of great knowledge being passed around and shared. I think that's one thing I can be very thankful of, is that every one of those areas have been, every one of these different institutions have really been coming forward and bringing forward their understanding and expertise in different areas, as well as, of course, sharing what has worked for them and what hasn't worked for them. And that open culture of sharing and being willing to lend those resources, I think is going to hopefully go a long way. Yeah, I appreciate that. Any other questions?
Hello. Hi. We actually have a question from an audience member joining us virtually, asking, what is the best way to explain the new accessibility policy to the instructors at our universities?
That's a good question. Yeah, looking at how do you best explain this policy to instructors? I don't know, you want to take this one, Ruben?
I'm happy to take it. You want the stick or the carrot now? So what I always tell people is that if someone doesn't have access to your information, then your information is useless to them. So it's pretty direct and a pretty blunt response, but it's like building a building and no one can access it. So what's the point of having the building? So I've heard a lot of feedback that it takes time, it's too much work, etc. I acknowledge that. Yes, something that is new can feel like it's an additional burden, but I don't think we can ever think about accessibility and right-doing as a burden. I think we need to think of it as our right-doing obligation. We need to ensure that all individuals, whether disabled or otherwise, can access our programs, services, and activities. What I always tell people is that when you don't know how to do something, or it feels overwhelming, or you feel like it's someone else's responsibility, you're probably not alone. So reach out. There are a lot of resources at the university, and we're working on trying to identify what additional resources we need to provide in order to do our best to comply with this rule. But I always start from a place of trying to understand and explain that this policy is a good policy and that it ensures that individuals will have seamless access to technology which affords individuals that seamless, easy use access in the first place. So I hope that's a sufficient answer, and feel free to follow up with me. I'm more than happy to engage one-on-one to provide additional information and advice about how to address this type of issue.
Do we have time for a few more? I think one individual over here, please.
Yes, thank you. You addressed some of the questions and different aspects of your presentation, but does the new accessibility rule requires to address more than one disability at the same time? You usually give one example with one disability, but what if you have a group of disabilities? Do you have to accommodate them all, and how do you do that? Thank you.
Yeah. I think there's a couple ways to look at this. I think one of the things about the rule as it aligns with our policy today is that specification, the WCAG specification. When you are able to follow that rule, at least to the AA standard that we are striving for, that should, if done properly, include folks of a variety of disabilities. That should include individuals that may be dealing with a multitude of different issues that may have to be brought forward and brought to their attention of how this technology can be made more accessible to them. The difficulty that we see often, I'll just be honest, with a lot of tools and vendors at times is that they will say they partially support a specification or a particular rule. That partial supports is often where we see gaps like that, right? Where you've addressed this for one individual, but this isn't addressing the needs for all. And I think this is where, again, this goes in some ways back to those conversations with if this is a outside vendor tool or if this is another particular piece of software, just to try to emphasize that it is important that we try to meet the full specification. And that is a challenge. That'll be a challenge for many, I know. But the idea that that is what's going to kind of include everybody to bring everyone to the table, I think is the most important piece. But feel free to add if you have.
I was just going to provide an example. So under the new rule, in I'm acting like everybody here is an instructor. In our Canvas, for example, we might upload a video and ask individuals to watch the video as part of homework. That video needs to have captions and possibly audio descriptions based on the content of the video. That video accessibility features of captions and audio descriptions are going to serve the needs of different individuals with accessibility considerations or access needs. So really programming and ensuring that technology meets the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 AA will meet, to a certain degree, the greatest array of individuals with various disability types. There is another level of the standard, 2.1 AA, that meets an even higher level. There's even WCAG 3.0, for example, that meets a much higher access level.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time today. We greatly appreciate having you.
Thank you.